One day, when the maid was washing the dishes, her boss approached her and asked her to take good care of the lunch and leave everything the way she likes it, because she was coming home to eat with her family. The maid says she will do everything, she just needs to know what time she will arrive. She said she would be back at noon and asked her husband, who was next to her, to be careful because she had asked a plumber to fix a leak in the kitchen that had been dripping for days. He agrees, and then he wanted to know if she was already going to work, and when she says yes, he asks her to leave the keys at home because he had lost. So she accepts and says goodbye to the two. As she leaves the house, he looks at the employee differently and then goes to hug her, saying he couldn't wait to be alone with her. And together they speak ill of his wife, complaining that she had taken too long to leave. He then talks to his lover about the plumber's arrival, fearing there won't be time to be alone with her. But she says that there will be time and they can enjoy. And although he continues to fear that there will be no time, she continues to insist that the two of them should enjoy this moment. Then they leave the kitchen kissing and go to the bedroom. They spent a long time there, and when they came out they heard someone knocking on the door. So he goes to answer, asking her to pipe quickly and shut up. When he opens the door, it was the plumber. He then introduces himself and says that he was in William's service. The husband then confirms this and asks her to come in to find out what has been going on for days. When they get to the kitchen, she asks her employee to explain better what is going on. She then explains to him what the situation is inside the sink cabinet, and he begins to check what the problem is. At that point, the boss asks the plumber how much time he thought he was going to spend on this job. He replies that it will surely take half an hour. The boss then asks him to make himself comfortable because he would need to fix something on the bedroom, and then asks his maid to come with him because he couldn't fix it by himself. She then accepts and goes with him to the bedroom, leaving the plumber alone in the kitchen. He finds this story very suspicious, but continues to do the work. And 2 hours later, after waiting a long time for the boss to come back, and already tired of waiting, decides to go after him to get the money for the service, and then walks around the house. And when he approaches the bedroom, he notices something strange. He perceives a noise and soon understands what was happening. The boss was in bed with the maid. He didn't know what to do, whether to wait a little longer or to knock on the door. But he saw that there was no other way but to knock on the door. Very determined, he chooses to call the boss and explains that he has finished the job and that he has to leave, so the boss asks him to wait a moment. At that moment the plumber returns to the kitchen and the boss follows him. Then he explains that there was indeed a problem with the plumbing, but that he had already fixed it, but he needed to stay longer than he should, and for that it will be necessary to charge an extra fee. The boss, a little embarrassed, accepted and said he would ask his wife to send him that extra amount. Then he thanks him and says goodbye, and the boss walks him to the door, also thanking him for the service. When he closes the door, he goes all worried to his lover, saying that surely the plumber would have suspected everything. And she agrees, saying that yes, from the way he had looked, he had certainly been suspicious. Then he gets nervous, not knowing what to do, because the plumber was a friend of his wife and would surely tell her everything. And her lover replies that he had already warned her that at any moment someone would suspect the two of them, and that it would even be impossible to cook at that time, that there would never be time to prepare everything before the landlady arrived, because it was almost time of his return home and he hardly knows what to think, because he is so worried. So he decides to blame the plumber, and she agrees. She says that would be the best option, and that he should say that since he had taken too long to solve the problem, she had no way of preparing the lunch. So he agrees and says that it would really be the best, and that is why he would wait for her in the living room, hoping that she would not suspect anything. Then he goes out to wait for his wife in the living room. When he was in the living room waiting for his wife, he heard the doorbell ring, and when he opened, it was his wife. After hugging him, he says that the work had been so much that he almost couldn't get to eat, and goes to the kitchen saying that he was starving. When he arrives, he asks the employee if she has made the food. She tells him that it would have been impossible because the plumber had taken too long to fix the problem. The landlady says that she had received a message from him saying that she would need to receive an additional fee for the delay. Her husband then asks her not to worry because it was more money, but she complains that it wasn't right. After all, money was very difficult, so her husband, trying to hide it, asks her if she remembers a restaurant that has opened near her house, and when she says yes, he calls her to have lunch over there. She said she would go, but first she would call the plumber to find out what really happened, because she wasn't going to pay an extra fee without knowing why. Her husband insists that she drop that story because it was nothing serious and calls her one more time to go to the restaurant so they can eat. So she agrees and tells her employee that she doesn't have to worry because she will bring her food. The employee thanks her and finally the two go to eat together at the restaurant. The next day, the boss arrives in the kitchen saying good morning to the employee and without caring much about his wife grabs her right there saying he missed her and then, to cover it up, asks what had happened to get her to work earlier. Then she replies that as it was a holiday there were fewer buses running, so she had to get there early so as not to waste time. Then, looking at the body of the employee, he asks her to bring a coffee and while she prepares it, he comments that his wife was still in bed sleeping, but that she would wake up soon to eat too. He thanks her and she goes back to her activities in the kitchen while he stays nearby, chatting and commenting on how many things he had to solve that day. In the bedroom, the woman who was already waking up looks for her husband, but realizes that he is already up, so she decides to get up and have coffee with him. Then gets out of bed and goes to the kitchen. When arrives, says good morning to the maid and her husband, who was having coffee, and then says that she wanted to sleep a little more, but hadn't been able to. She then asks the maid to prepare some fruit and tea for her and then asks her husband what they are going to do on the holiday. But he tells her that it will be difficult to do anything because he has no money. He explains how complicated the situation is and that they must cut certain expenses. She is sad because she wanted to enjoy the holiday with him out of the house, but he keeps insisting that they had to save money for more important things. Then she says she's going to take a shower and asks the maid to clean the breakfast table. After taking the towel, she invites her husband to take a bath with her, but he refuses saying that he has already bathed. She insists saying that they haven't done it together for a long time, but he refuses it and says that she might bathe alone, since they weren't born together. Then she gives up and goes to bathe alone. At that moment her husband takes advantage of the opportunity and grabs his employee again and while they kissed, his wife appears again in the kitchen, not believing what she was seeing. She is outraged by that scene, but he says that it was nothing bad, just a hug. But she does not accept. He keeps saying it wasn't a big deal and her lover says the same thing too, but she can't accept it. She can't believe that he hugged her employee like that without any intention, and no matter how much he insisted on that lie, she couldn't believe it and got more and more angry with both of them, asking if she wasn't ashamed to do that in front of her nose. But since he couldn't convince his wife, he decided to tell her the whole truth and without mincing his words told her that he was in love with the employee and that he wanted to leave with her. His wife couldn't believe what she was hearing. Then she got even angrier and said that he was a horrible man, that she always gave him all attention and did everything she could to keep that house. But he rudely tells her that he can even do that, because the house is his too. And they stayed a long time arguing about these things while the employee listened to everything in silence. But the next moment she encourages the boss to throw his wife out of the house and he immediately accepts. His wife could not believe this nonsense, but he insists that she must get out of there immediately and without even letting her take her things, they send her out of the house with only the clothes on her back. And as if that weren't enough, they say absurd things to her as she leaves and after closing the door without any remorse, she goes to her lover and hugs her. And together they commemorate the departure of his wife from home. And they say they couldn't bear to live with her anymore without being able to live together, but now they could love each other in peace. And to commemorate that moment, the two enter the bedroom. A month later, He goes into the kitchen in the morning and asks his new wife if she made them coffee, but she tells him no, as she just woke up too. He then complains that she never made coffee for the two of them, so she asks him why he didn't make it himself since he had hands for it, saying that she spends all day on her cell phone, and she tells him that he should understand that she is the boss now. He then said that if the regret killed him, he wouldn't be there because he was already regretting leaving his ex-wife for it. She was once again upset by what she heard from him and told him if he was really upset to call his ex-wife to take care of everything. Sad, he goes to the kitchen, and when he opens the cupboard notices that there is a water leak from the sink into the cupboard, and he mentions it to her, who responds by saying that he should call the plumber again to solve that problem. So he goes out to call the plumber. A while later, when he had left the house, the plumber knocks on the door and his wife goes to answer. Then, she starts to explain to him that the sink pipe kept wetting the cabinet, and that she didn't understand why this was happening, and that's why she wanted him to take a closer look so that he could finally fix the problem of plumbing. He said he was going to take a look, and while he was getting ready, he asked about his former boss, and she replied saying that she didn't live there anymore, and that she was the boss of that house. He was ashamed, but continued his service. Afterwards, she asked him to stay there fixing the plumbing problem while she went to take a shower. And he said it's okay, he'd stay there and leave it all fixed for her. A while later, while she was taking a shower, he was thinking about how the world was upside down, where the maid was becoming the boss under those circumstances, and he felt sorry for the boss's ex-wife for having to go through that kind of situation. And while fixing the plumbing, the new mistress arrives in the kitchen with ulterior motives, asking if he needed anything. He was ashamed of her attitude and said that everything was fine, that he didn't need anything. She kept insinuating herself to him, saying that she was going to take a shower, and if he needed to, he could call her. But he was smart, wanting to prevent any kind of confusion, and knowing his boss's wife well, he decided to turn on his camera's video and leave it in a strategic place, in case she tried anything else. She comes back once more, this time only in a towel, asking again if he needed anything or help. As he again said no, she asked if he was sure, and that if he changed his mind and needed something, she would go leave the bathroom door unlocked so he could go over there and talk to her. When she left, he was talking to himself about the employer's behavior, and commenting that his cell phone camera was recording everything as proof that he was doing nothing wrong, and continued to do his service. After a while, he finally finishes his job, and says to himself that he would leave, because he knew that if he stayed, he would get into trouble. And after packing up his things, he decides to leave silently, saying that later he would settle everything with the boss, and without making any noise, he leaves through the door of the living room so that the boss doesn't see him. And already outside the house, as he walks down the corridor of the building, he comments about how much that woman was not ashamed of always throwing herself at other men. At that moment, he decides to call his former boss, and tell her everything that was happening in that house. And when she answers, he greets her and says that he was in his ex-house fixing the kitchen sink pipe once again. And after they commented about her not living there anymore, he asks where she was living, because he would really like to talk to her. She then gives him her new address, and says he could go there when he leaves the building. He then agrees, and heads to her house. When he gets there, he calls at the gate, and soon after, he is greeted by her, who asks him to enter. As he goes in, he comments about her leaving home, and she tells him why she didn't live there anymore, and what her ex-husband had done with her, so he says that he had heard about that story, and that it was precisely for that reason I was there. Then he begins to tell everything he had seen that day, everything that her ex-husband had done with the maid, and that he had found their attitudes strange, but that because it was none of his business, he thought it better not saying anything, even not agreeing with anything I had seen there. And he said that today the ex-maid had